All right, welcome back to Car Stories with Sung Kang
and Emelia Hartford. Today's guest, we have Carter Swan coming on. Carter is a huge inspiration to mine, and I'm sure many others as well. He's the producer of Gran Turismo, The Last of Us, Twisted Metal, and so many other incredible projects. He's a producer at PlayStation's production, and a big part of why you guys are seeing these incredible adaptions come to play. And we had such a cool conversation that I hope inspires many, and I learned a lot from. And although it wasn't so much car focused, I think cars being the connective tissue to why we're able to have these conversations and producing a car film to having a good conversation about just what it's like creating and producing in this entertainment world.
Yeah. It's so refreshing to have a conversation with somebody in the business that's just sincere and honest about like who they are and their perspective. And it's always something to learn every time you sit with Carter. So
yeah,
it's good conversation.
Yeah.
You know. All right, here we go. Where'd you come from, Carter?
Seattle. Yeah.
So you came to LA for the Hollywood dream?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Can you give us a little context, like your history, the Carter history?
I'll try to make it quick, yeah. So I went to the Seattle Film Institute, which was the only film school we had in Seattle at the time, and it was in basically like the basement of a Kiwanis 2 nights a week.
What's a Kiwanis?
It's kind of like an American Legion. It's like an old club.
Okay.
Like one of those hall kind of places where they would have memberships.
Okay.
So finished that, went to USC summer production workshop with Universal, which was awesome. Had a really great time at that. Finished that, was right at the top of my class in that. So I was thinking about going to film school either at USC or perhaps Loyola Marymount, where our professor at the time was sort of like starting his own film course. And then my cousin, I sat down with him. So my cousin is this director, this guy named John Dahl, who did Rounders and Joyride, and he's a big TV director to this day. And he's like, don't go to film school. Like you're gonna get 6-figure debt over your head. You're gonna spend 20 years making no money, and you're gonna have this 6-figure debt over your head, and it's gonna crush you. And just, I've talked to you enough to know that like the film school, the stuff you're gonna get out of education wise, you know it. You're good. You've got it. You read the books. You do the reading. You're like obsessed with this stuff. What you need now is just jobs on your resume. And he's like, and then once you get inside, no one cares about your education. They just care about your resume once you start. And so he said, I'll get you a job. I'll get you a job on my next movie, which turned out being Joyride, which was this J.J. Abrams kind of horror movie for Fox a long time ago. That's probably most notable because it stars Paul Walker. And so I worked on that, and that was in 99 I started that. And so the shoot... So I'd moved back home from USC, from when I went there. The shoot started in Nevada, so I packed up my Cherokee, everything I owned, went to Nevada, drove around working on the movie, got back to LA, got an apartment, and I've been here like ever since. And in that time, I did every kind of development job you could do. I wrote. I just tried to keep doing different jobs and having different experiences and just trying to wear a lot of hats. So I just felt like I just kind of like a basketball player, just trying to like make sure my game was complete. So whether it was writing or production or development, just any of those phases, post-production, just having a grasp of what it was. And like seeing it firsthand as much as I could, and trying it myself whenever I could. So I did that for, the next 16, 17 years, just bounced around. The best job in that time that I could probably talk to you about, it was obviously an interesting experience, was working for Paul Walker. Because I, after Joyride, became good friends with him. I mean, everybody's already said it, but I mean, he was the greatest guy like, in the world. And, you know, you have teachers along the way in Hollywood, you learn.
Yeah.
Teach you good things and bad things.
Yeah.
He was one of those teachers that I look back and I'm like, it was just all good. And it was all great lessons that I use to this day. And I've worked with a lot of actors now over the years, and I tell people, you know, I think the thing that was special about him, other than the obvious things, was I don't know an actor that he was more, he's in real life, he was exactly who you would expect him to be. In the best ways possible. Judging from just, you know, because I always find that weird. It's like you guys are playing these characters, so people kind of think they get to know you. And you're a lot different usually than the people that you're playing on screen. And it can be kind of weird for them and for you, obviously. But for him, he was exactly who you thought he'd be. The person he portrayed himself as, or he came off as, he was exactly that guy in, like, again, the best ways possible. So miss him all the time. Think about him all the time.
I agree with you. You know, I mean, he was a teacher for me too, because when, you know, I started with him we started on 4 together, and, you know, they were already famous. And so, you know, being able to watch and hang out with somebody that is famous in the public at that level was a great education for me. And the way he carried himself, the things that we did together, there was no movie star nonsense. We drove to the mall to go buy underwear.
Yeah.
You know, and go buy flannel shirts at like Old Navy.
Yep, that's him.
Right? And stopped anyone who would ask, you know, for a picture or an autograph. Stop, engage, say hello, smile. And I could see, like, there were times where, you know, it was inconvenience or it was just not appropriate. It was such a struggle for him to not be able to provide that.
Yeah.
You know, because he taught me, it's like, you know, without the fans, like, we do not have, you know, food on the table. They are the reason why we're here. We exist for them, right? And he meant it. I mean, he believed in it. His heart was just so kind, you know? It's like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
So.
No, yeah, that's exactly him. He always had time for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, even though he didn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he would make time. And he also, you know, just as a person, he really appreciated everything.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that he provided me the most, I think, out of anything is, I think what we all need when you're starting out in Hollywood is somebody who's successful to point at you and go, you can do this. Like, trust me, I'm look at me, I'm at the top. I know you can do this. I believe in you, and I'll help you if I can. And he was really one of the first people to do that for me. Because I became his producing partner for a short time after. And so getting that kind of assurance early on was really helpful, because I think a lot of people can go years without it, and then it becomes difficult because it's just you in your own head going, I know I'm going to make it. I know I'm going to make this happen. I'm not sure how yet, but I believe it's going to happen. And you just need along the way enough good role models and people that come across you, you know, be it luck or whatever, that can just point at you and say, what you're doing is right. You've made the right decisions here in your life, and
Agreed.
Keep pursuing it.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then now, of course, working for PlayStation, which is like the double dream come true, because I get to work, you know, with the video game properties, which I grew up loving myself. And of course, you know, working on movies and making adaptations, which is something I am very passionate about, and my favorite thing to do in the world. And I finally got Gran Turismo made.
After 10 years.
That's how you know each other.
That's how we know each other.
Over a decade. Yeah, I worked on
Decade. It took 10 years.
Yeah.
People think everything happens overnight.
I know.
Right?
No.
But,
no, it certainly does.
10 years, Carter?
And that's another one, you know, you go, like, there were so many times where I was like, am I just crazy? like because I was sort of one of the people who just never gave up on it, because it died a few years in. It sort of went into turnaround. And when I got to PlayStation, because I'd worked on it in development before, just as a development guy, not as one of the producers, it just didn't work. And it was really talented and smart, high-level people, and pretty acclaimed producers who couldn't get it going. And so,
why though? Just what I mean, explain to the layman out there, like, why, if you have all these big names and you have all the right components, still in our business, things just, it's almost like winning the lottery. Like, I think it's, people say that to make a movie, it's actually harder than winning the lottery. Right?
You gotta line up. You gotta line up a lot of things, and a lot of the things that line up to help get it made. They're out of your control. They're things you don't even see coming. And I think this story is a good example of that. And I mean, I can only give you my perspective on this, but when I kept reading the scripts, it's weird because it happened in real life, but it's still a pretty outlandish premise. The idea that somebody could play video games and become a professional race car driver, to your average human being walking around who's not, doesn't understand the sim world, doesn't understand like what's going on there and what's been happening in the last, decade or so, like, that is a ridiculous premise. And so when you wrote a story that was fictionalized based on something so outlandish, the problem I had when I'd read it was always, I was like, this just feels fake. This feels like just nonsense. It doesn't feel like something that actually happened. It feels like a movie. So when I came back into PlayStation, I think there were two things that happened that really got us to where we were. And when you look back again, line up with things that we didn't really even understand at the time when we started doing this, right? Which was, one, the first writer I hired when I got to PlayStation was my friend Jason Hall, who wrote American Sniper and Thank You for Your Service. He wrote and directed Thank You for Your Service. And my logic was, okay, let's get somebody who writes real-life dramas to try this, because I don't think we need an action writer here. I don't think the racing and all that's going to take care of itself. You've got to really care about these characters and this guy's life and these kind of dramatic elements. That's what's going to make this fly. It's kind of like Rocky, right? People love Rocky. It's not because of the boxing scenes themselves, the technical craftsmanship of them. They're great. When you talk about Rocky, you don't go, oh, it's the fight scenes. The fight scenes are what make that movie so good. No, it's the character stuff.
It's a love story.
Exactly. Like, so Jason was just a lot different than the other people who had tried it. And then, so one of the producers that worked on it with me all these years was Dana Brunetti. And he recommended to me, he said, have you ever seen this kid's story? Jan Martinborough. And I hadn't. So met Jan through his manager, flew out to London, sat with them both, explained what it is. Jason came with me, what it is we were trying to do, and asked Jan as many questions as we could in the time we had with him.
Jan is the real life character.
Yeah, Jan Martinborough, who the movie is based on. And so I think you take those two things, and then you sort of look at what we were trying to do with the movie, right? Which was to do a video game racing movie that was real, based on a real story, and to do kind of a video game adaptation that was based on a true story, which at the time was totally groundbreaking. Tetris, I think, beat us a little bit to the to the punch, which I was so upset about when it happened. But and then you think about what Gran Turismo is, the real racing simulator, and you think about Kazunori's sort of obsession with reality, and why that game has become what it is, and those two themes really marry well together. right? Of like doing a real life story, doing this kid's true story, marrying it to this adaptation. And then it just kind of clicked for everybody. Like, oh, this is a great idea. This is a great movie. And then I think getting Neil Blomkamp obviously was a big deal for us.
South African director who directed District 9.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Chappie.
Chappie.
And Elysium.
Yeah.
Which was interesting too, because so I had met him and they said, do you, we'd like you to get on a Zoom with him. And I'm thinking the District 9, Chappie, and that gave me a little pause, I'll be honest, because I was like, I don't want this to turn into some big effects movie. The whole point is we were going to do something pretty grounded and real here. But then talking to him, first of all, how many Skylines has he owned? He's owned like 3 or 4.
He's a car guy.
Yeah, he's a huge car guy. And he's like, I've owned like 3 R34s or something, which was, obviously very prevalent in our script. And he's like, so it's just weird. Like, it's this kind of weird obsession of mine is these kind of cars. And, you're making a movie about a lot of them. And then, he said, I've wanted to for years do something hopeful, and every time I try to generate my own material, it's hopeful, but it's still really, really, really dark getting there. And I just wanted to do something that wasn't super dark the whole way getting there. I wanted to do something that just kind of felt hopeful throughout it. And I didn't know what that story was. And then I read this. This is exactly the kind of thing I wanted to do. And then the last thing, which for me was most important, was him saying, I just want to do this real. I want to do this as real as possible. Yeah, I've got a couple ideas for some effects things. You'll put we're in his head and you'll kind of put the car around him. But I want to keep that to a minimum. I really want to try to make just a badass, practical driving movie.
A lot of his films have like this raw element to it too, which I feel like was perfect to tell this true story in this cool space.
Yeah, I think he's very grounded in his approach to storytelling. Like, I don't think he likes big, theatrical performances. And I think he likes his characters to feel real. I think he likes to kind of create elevated worlds and then have real people inhabit them. If you look at sort of his resume and the things that he's done, I think that sort of fits well in looking back with what it was that we were trying to do, because this isn't sort of elevated world in some ways, but it's again how the real people react to it that makes it really interesting, right?
And having the documentary approach too, of looking at the cameras that were also props but also used for filming while on set was a cool approach.
Yeah. I mean, we were able to do a lot of really cool things.
Yeah, and the audience loved it. It was such a great feel good. I know I'm biased, but I genuinely I get so many messages and I hear so much about how it inspired a lot of people too. And I feel like if you can tell those stories, that makes people feel something. I feel like that's, hugely important.
No, me too. I'm so proud of it. And I worked on it longer than anybody. So, there's always that, oh my God, what if I spent 10 years on something that I don't even really like, right? But that's not the case. I really love it. And I think it fits well in our library of things that we've done, because I sort of obsess on always making sure that every one of them is different and its own thing. And I think that's, if you look at what we've done so far, that's one of the things I'm the most proud of. If you take Uncharted and Twisted Metal and Last of Us and Gran Turismo and you hold them all up, they're all so different.
Yeah.
The tones are different, the looks are different, the vibe is different. And so we really try to make sure that every single one of our projects, it's just its own thing, and we're not falling into this kind of formula of we kind of do this with every one of these kind of stories, or we just try to find really different and interesting ways to roll the different movies out or the shows out that are a little bit unexpected. because it's easy when you're adapting something, especially something like ours that you've already seen before, rendered so well on a screen, to fall into like just that, let's just deliver the exact same thing in our own way, and that's going to be boring and not fun and not really an interesting experience for anybody. So being able to like do something really different and make, you know, the show or the movie its own thing, as opposed to the game and what it's, the story it's telling and everything, and still line up and still make the fans feel good. It's always this like really careful balancing act for us.
Yeah. How do you last 10 years, Carter? Because, you know, I think in anything, especially in our business of Hollywood, you know, the people keep saying, I've always been told it's not a sprint, man. It's this long ultra marathon. Yeah, marathon. It's like a ultra marathon, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when I think the listeners hear like Gran Turismo took 10 years to make, like what? Right? Like, I mean, how do you keep like the flame burning, like opposed to just like giving up? You know?
You know, you just think something's a good idea. You know, like. You just have to believe in it. I mean, every one of these movies or shows that gets made has somebody, sometimes multiple people, who thought, let's not give up on this.
Yeah.
They're not always super easy and fast. I mean...
were there times where you wanted to give up or you're about to?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, people ask me, like, for Hollywood, like, what... I mean, it took you so long to make it. Like, what's the key to success in Hollywood? And honestly, my big thing I tell like the film students and stuff is I'll go back to Rocky. I'm like, you just got to be able to keep getting up when you get knocked down. And if you can just keep getting up and learn every time you get knocked down why you got knocked down and like how you're not going to make the same mistakes the next time, eventually some opportunity will arise for you. But you just have to be willing to keep getting up, even though a lot of times it won't even make any sense.
Yeah.
Too, right?
Agreed.
That's why I would always produce short films. I'd write scripts too. I would just get those failures out of you. Learn those hard lessons anytime you can and just keep getting better and stronger. And there are ways to improve yourself even when you're just sitting there in your apartment thinking they're not. Well, just start writing a script. You know, that's an easy way to get better. Go just do a free PA job on Craigslist and just learn something crazy. Because I swear to God, you'll learn one thing on every shoot, no matter how small or weird or obscure it seems to you at the time. You know, and just take it seriously. Like, if you really care that much about it, like, try to do the best work that you can. It doesn't matter how small something you're doing is, or how, you know, it might not seem like you're a million miles away from Hollywood. Doesn't matter. Like, you should treat it the same way you would treat working on a $200 million James Cameron movie.
Yeah.
Like, take it all seriously, have fun doing it, but like, understand there's no such thing as like a small opportunity, or just always what you make of it.
You just got to get up and go.
Yeah.
Like I use like running as a great, like, you know, analogy, and a discipline to, like, you know, this business as an actor and as a filmmaker. Because I would say, you know, most of my career has been no's. And still, every day it's like a no.
Yeah.
And me too.
Yeah, people are like,
same.
Right? They're like, what do you mean they said no
all
to
of
you?
us.
You're in those movies. And I go, yeah, but they still say no to me every single day.
Yep.
Every day, right? And it's like it's like running up, like, you know, mountains, right? Like if you go to like Griffith Park or you go to like Mulholland Park, there's all these like hills, right? And
Yeah.
first hill is so hard, and that's like first stage. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you got an audition or you got a meeting, and it's like, to get that is so hard. You got to run up that hill, right? And then you get there and you're like, did it. It's like, hey, there's another one over there because you got to go do the job. And even then, that is a whole journey and a hill climb.
Yeah.
You get the job. And then there's this like waiting for like post-production. Is the movie ever going to be finished?
Yeah.
Because I've been part of movies that I've been cut out. I completely cut out, right? Or the movie never comes out, right?
Yeah,
I did like 4 movies last year. I think maybe 2 of them no one will ever see, right? Like, you're like, how does that happen, right? And then you got to go promote the movie, right? And
exactly.
And do people even care, right?
No, it's that thing, right? Of people always say this, and I mean, I'm a cliche saying this myself, but there's never that. You always think there's going to be that day where it all turns around.
Yeah.
And you can point back at it and go, that was the day it all started.
Yeah.
And after that, it was smooth sailing because I was on a whole nother level. And it's like, no, that day's never coming. And anytime you do have those days, it just means a lot more work.
Yeah.
That's coming your way.
Yeah.
I think people hope for an overnight success story because I think sometimes it makes them feel like it's an easy finger to point at of like, oh, well, that's why, versus like the hard work, the trials, the tribulations, and everything that goes into it. And I think too, as I get older, I now understand why I would always have, and I hear often people saying that's why you have to find happiness in your day-to-day because you can't always control everything. Mm-hmm. It's the whole life is running at Griffith or surfing where the waves are coming. Sometimes you can't control it, or a roller coaster. It's trying to find peace and happiness in what you can't control and knowing that, hopefully you can do one day what you love or what you've always wanted to do. And even then, it's going to have its own hurdles.
No, and you'll have moments. Like I remember being in Hungary on Gran Turismo. Like in the first week, and like sitting there and realizing like we owned this F1 track and looking at all these trailers, right? There's like 30 trailers. There's the movie trailers, and then there's the trailers for the cars for the movies.
It was pretty cool.
And just all these people and cars flying everywhere and realizing like, wow, I did it. And there was like a moment where I kind of sat over on a pit wall and was like watching all this and like, I made this happen. Like, if I would have given up, none of this would be here.
Yeah.
And you have these moments that's cool, but then immediately there's like, oh, there's a problem. And I got to go deal with that.
You know how they say it's not the destination, it's the journey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somebody recently had added to that made a lot of sense for me because I never could really subscribe to that. I go, man, but the journey sucks, dude. It's like this journey is kind of lame at times. Like most of the time, the journey kind of is lonely and like shitty, right? Mm-hmm. And hard. And then someone was like, well, it's not really the journey. The journey doesn't matter. It's like the people you're on with this journey.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right? It's the people that you meet.
Yeah.
Right? And because you could be in like the worst place. Hungary could be a crappy place if you're with the wrong people.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
but with
you're
the
right.
right people, it's the great.
No, you're right. And by the way, I ended up enjoying it a lot. Yeah. And that was partially because when, Jan got there and I got to be a little bit better friends with some of the people there.
Yeah.
And that was fun. Watching Amelia get to, sort of like spread her wings and act in a big movie like
Which
that.
That was your biggest movie up to that point, right?
Yeah. I'm so grateful to you for that opportunity. He's going to try to dismiss it.
Why are you thinking Carter? Like where?
Because
I'll let you.
Yeah, I don't want to like talk over you here.
No.
We were discussing the fact that we had this group of kids at the academy, and could we get some like influencers in that group of kids that are in the movie at the academy? Can we get people that mean something in the car community to come in and play some of these kids and play some other parts in the movie? So we didn't have a lot of car people, believe it or not, in the mix of Niels definitely knows cars, but it's like from a technical standpoint. He's very much like an engineer who's obsessed with like the engineering of cars and the greatness of them. And I know a little bit more about like influencers and like YouTube channels and things like that. So I'd become a fan of Amelia's when I watched Fastest Car. And so threw out a few names. Yours was definitely one of them. And they said, great. And then next thing I knew, like a couple of weeks later, the audition tapes came in and they were all like, she's really, really great. She's really great. We got to put her in this. And I was like, of course. Yeah, that'd be awesome. And so, Amelia likes to say that I got this for her, but I didn't do anything. She got it for herself. Like the fact of the matter is I'm just trying to get influencers in the movie. And I didn't know if you could act or not. I hadn't seen any of your things, but it just seemed like a great idea to me. But I was really thrilled because, even from day one, I don't even know if you know this, like I got emails from the other producers and stuff. And I wasn't there when she started, saying like, wow, so great. She did such a great job. She brought so much to this kind of thankless character within the Academy. We're going to try to bolster her character a little bit more. Great job. Yeah, like from day one. Yeah. So like they were really over thrilled with everything you were doing right from the beginning. And
the lesson is that you can't find these people if they're not laced up and running up that hill.
Yeah.
Right. If you're looking for runners and they're not running up that hill, like you're like, well, who is this? Who's the influencer that you're going to pick from, right? So that's why she was out there, like being proactive and doing her thing, is and that's why it wasn't luck, right? You make your own luck, right? So you guys help each other. It's not like one person just like giving, right? So I think young folks out there, or even actually anybody, because even I'm learning from this too, is that it's been said that there is no small role, right? Like it's what you make of it, right? And at times, like I catch myself going, I'm not doing that. Like, what is that? Like I don't want to do that role. Like that's like it's a thankless role. It's like what's the point of being there, right? And then I have to like lace up and go running and like find like the half full perspective, and it's like, well, make it great, make it bigger. Like, and if you can't, if they're not willing to make it bigger, like go and like put some positive mojo, give them some sunshine in that room, and then make relationships, right? I mean, is that what Carter's talking about? Is like you approached it that way,
So the role was an under 5. And
what's that mean, under 5?
Under 5 lines.
Okay.
And I remember being so excited for this opportunity. And I felt like I'd been preparing for this role my entire life, being, in the car world. I felt like I had this fresh perspective on especially being a female in the space. So I was really excited to tell that story regardless of what the word said on the paper. I feel like I got to bring this energy to this part. And I guess the feedback was good enough where you guys put me into more of the movie and had me fly back and come back for another month to be part of the ending, which was really cool, really special, and really humbling. And I guess I did something right.
No, you earned all that. That was all you. When I talk to young actors, I've always just said, I look at like Johnny Depp, right? And I think one of the things that's made him special over the years is that it seems to me like he kind of reads a script and goes, all right, here are all the obvious things that an obvious person would put into this character. There's the obvious qualities that this character has that seems like they should be like no-brainers when you read them. I'm going to cross all those out. And I'm going to do this in a totally different way where I throw out all those obvious traits and characteristics. And I just think more often than not, in the past when I've looked at auditions and we've cast people, it's just the person who just found something different than everybody else. Where it's like, oh, we didn't really think of this.
It's funny you say that because for Gran Turismo, I was like, why does every woman who plays a car chick have to be this like bitchy, badass, tough And I'm
Yeah.
like, and it's funny, when I read for the audition, I consciously made a note of that. I was like, no, I don't think that's, you have to like stereotype that
Yeah.
that person and try to bring some new life to it of like, this is a once in a lifetime. I mean, for real Amelia, and then also for the character of like going out and making a dream of something, right? So
No, and that's great because that's you too, right?
yeah, and I'm not trying to make it about myself. I'm seconding what you're saying
please,
about like.
No, but please do. But like that's true. Like you were that person in real life, so you knew that, right? So you were able to bring that to the character and say like we're not all like this, and this is an obvious way that most girls would come in and play this part. I'm going to play it like exactly the opposite. And and again, it's there's a science to it, and there's like a real nuance, and you have to get. I remember seeing this like Ryan Gosling interview that he did for some documentary about how bad auditioning sucks.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
Yeah, when he was talking about it, like, yeah, you come out and there's a ticket on your car.
Yeah.
But he said, like, you walk in and, you're wearing the cowboy hat. And every guy's wearing the cowboy hat.
I've seen that.
And you thought, like, oh, no, I thought the cowboy hat. So, like, you have to, it's a next level layer of thinking like that. But I do think try things and be different when I'd say is, like, what makes people stand out and get roles. Is like you're trying for something, you're trying something different. You know that we've just watched 20 tapes in a row of a person playing this the same way. Mm-hmm. And where's that person that's like, again, different and found something new and interesting that they're bringing to the character that like was not there. I remember talking to you about Fast and the Furious and just the eating thing, right? And how much that changes the dynamics of that character, right? Instead of being the bitter, smoking older guy, like being somebody that people would like and like look for that and think that that's cool, and again relate to that.
and that risk of like doing that because people were looking. I remember when I was doing that on Tokyo Drift, people were looking at me like I was crazy.
Yeah,
I remember one producer grabbed the snacks out of my hand.
Really?
They're like, enough.
It was like, don't do that.
Snacks, right? Like, what are you doing? But I felt like I was a 5 and under character. I probably was, really, if you think about it, because I probably spoke like 3 lines in the film, and I had nothing to do.
But that character choice,
I needed an activity. Like I needed, so you can use the snacks to act. Like you can emote, some type of like inner dialogue with the snack. If you're like curious, you slow it down. You're disgusted, you can throw the snack down, right? I was like, and it's like, and I didn't make that up. Like I watched Steve McQueen behind the scenes with Magnificent Seven, and he was like the youngest and like least famous actor in this movie, and he was always next to Yul Brynner. Like he would probably be the Vin Diesel of the era at that time, right? Yeah. And he's like, hey, they had no lines. So he always had something. He was always doing something, and Yul Brynner would get all pissed off. He's like, "What are you doing, man?" It's like, "You're just supposed to stand there, right, and do nothing." He's like, "Well, and in his mind, he's like, I'm gonna steal this fucking scene, right?" And so people start focusing on what's this guy doing in the back.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right? So
I heard that story too, and then Yul told him like, "Just remember that you're behind me in the frame, and all I have to do is lean my head this way, and it's gone."
So, you got to do it with respect, Like, there's you can't ever come off like thirsty, right? Like you have to do it with class, and because another old timer gave me great advice. It's like, hey man, did you know that there's a tree in the Mona Lisa painting? And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes,
there's a tree. Yeah.
Right? You didn't know that? Right? He goes, because everyone's focused on the Mona Lisa. Yeah. Right? He's like, that's the star of the movie. Right? That's Yul Brynner. So make sure you're the best fucking tree. Right? Make sure you stand. We should put an apple on that tree. But, make sure that people don't go, oh, it's a painting about a tree and a lady. Yeah. It's like, be careful because that Mona Lisa will eat you. Right? Yeah. So I had a perspective change to auditions when I auditioned for Christopher Nolan years ago. He was one of his Batman movies. I don't know how many he did, but I think it was his first one. And the casting director was like very supportive of me, right? And
This was in person?
Yeah, in person, right? And he's like, hey, I think, he's very interested in you. So this is a role for you to lose, basically, And I'm like, oh, okay. And it was still at a time where like I wasn't like 100% sure of like my choices and even like what I had to offer, right? Like, why me? And so I walked into the audition and I was prepared, but then my first question, and he was so chipper, he was like so welcoming, and it was really cool, I'm actually getting to meet him in person, and he was like very charming and very warm, very gracious, and then everything turned when we had our brief conversation, and I was like, oh, so, I wanted to ask you first is, do you think this character has a Hong Kong dialect, like, what do you think he sounds like? And he just switched, and he's like, I could tell he was upset, and he's like, I don't know, that's your job. And then I didn't get the role, right? And I walked out of there, and I was like, dude, like, that was a great lesson to go in with strong choices. I don't need to be asking him, what do you think? Like, he's not the actor. He's like, I'm not the actor. Like, that's your job, man. Right? And I used to be like very dependent on the director going, hey, this is how I see it. This is how I would, do this or do that. And then it made me realize, like, I can't be doing that. Like, I can take direction if you don't like this choice or if you're like, hey, let's adjust this, right? But it totally changed the way I approach my work. Is like, I'm not asking your opinion. I'm going to go do my work because that's my job. Yeah. Right? It's like the tire, you going to the tire guy when you're the transmission dude going, hey, what do you think? Like, what's
like, I don't know, dude.
Like, how do I know, man? That's your job. Right? You put it into that like analogy. I was like, what am I doing? Why did I do that?
Well, right? How much in your career have you worked with a director to help craft a character together? Or does it usually fall where you take the initiative on that, and if there's guidance and it's less of a collaboration with the director?
I would say like beginner directors, they want to be doing that. They want like their fingerprints on everything because I don't think they've had enough experience with like professional actors, right? So they don't trust, they don't even trust themselves, so they don't trust anybody. So they feel like they have to put their hands on everything. But on the professional side, right? Like, I've barely ever even done table reads. Like, you're a pro athlete. You show up and you're supposed to go hit a home run, right? And that is your job to do, right? I realize that. So like the directors, we don't talk about like, hey, this is, when I was younger, I wanted that. I was like, hey, here's my book of like the backstory, the biography of this character that has 3 lines in this film, but I wrote a whole, biography of who. They're like, good for you. I'm busy, dude, right? So I still do that work, but I keep it to myself. And if they have a question, they know that I'm ready because I can fire off like where the character was born, what his blood type is, what his favorite like pizza is, what his favorite video game, what color his underwear, all those things, right? And then that, the director's like, yo, you're a pro. And that's, I think, the difference between like a student film and then when you get into the studio system is like no one has time for that. They don't. I've never worked with the director that wants to have lunch with me and go, this is what I'm thinking, like this is your character. They can tell you like, oh, this is, based off of like their personal experience. If they wrote it, they're like, hey, this is where this character was inspired from, and share some anecdotes. And a good director will go, now it's yours. Here are the ingredients, now it's yours. Yeah. Right?
No, I mean, right? Like it's funny because that's really the skill of a professional movie star actor. What it boils down to is you're supposed to be like somebody who can come out and do it right away. Yeah. Because we're spending a lot of money closing down the street and all these people and having like lights up and all these things. We need people who can come in and deliver quickly. Yeah. Like, and not somebody who's supposed to come in and it's going to take 2 hours to get you that take that you want. In theory, they're supposed to be able to come in and just knock it out right away. And that's how like a professional actor, especially in like television, really works, is you want people who are prepared, come in, nail it, let's move on.
And they can make adjustments quickly, right? And they're not there to argue with you, but they've done the work. If you ever watch like, what are the football documentaries on HBO?
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks. From basketball to football, especially football, is like, it's cold. That business is cold. Like if you miss a catch in like 2 games, you're like cut. Yeah. Or in baseball, like you're sent to like the AAA or the farm team, and you're good. But then like maybe just you choked at that game, or you just had bad couple of games, you're done. I equate being a professional actor in that way, is that. Like when I was younger, like I had so much sympathy, right, or empathy for like younger actors not being prepared, and now it's like, well, go do the student film first, or a whole bunch of them, and then when you get here, you better hit home runs, because if you're not, it's cold, man. Like people just stop talking to you. Like, you better come and deliver, right? And that's why you get paid the money, right? I mean,
and care. Like I've worked with multiple Academy Award winners now, and like I think the thing that it goes back to what I was saying earlier, they care about every take. The best ones I've worked with, they every time were like, how can I make it better, and you're sitting there going, well, that was pretty good. Like, but they will find that little thing, let me do one more take, and they'll find those little layers on something that's really great already, but like make it just that much better. And that's what makes them stand out, and why they give the performances that they give, because they treat every single take like, again, it's they're starring in a Star Wars movie, or like, I don't know, whatever the big time thing is, starring in a Chris Nolan movie.
It's the Japanese way of approaching things, right? Like you kind of, you remember that, what was that word, the otaku or kotaku?
Ikigai. Your ikigai.
You use that into the, like when you meet like an Academy Award actor that is still care. Some of them are like checked out, right? But then when you meet that person, you're like, oh, they approach it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and it's also, I've learned from screamers too, like tyrant directors, right? That are screaming at people, and and then we have dinner, and I, pick their brain. I go, what is this energy coming from? Like, where is it coming from? Today you can't do so much, but back in the day there were more of these type of people, right, in the business, and there still are. But I like to study them. I like to go, where is this coming from? And great advice I got from this legendary director, and he was like, why I never yell at you? And I'm like, why? He's like, you never leave set, and you're not looking for your chair. You don't, I know you smoke, but you don't leave to go have a bunch of cigarettes. You're there, you're watching, and you're 3 steps ahead of me. So you're thinking like a director. So you know that this is what I'm going to need. So you're already there. It's like, that dude over there, why I'm screaming at that dude is that he can't wait to go and have a cigarette. And then why I'm screaming at the AD is like, because she doesn't know what the 2 next setups are. And I'm like, but how is she going to know that? It's like, that's her job. She needs to care.
Yeah.
Right? She needs to care.
Yeah.
There's the word, you care. The best directors, they care the most, and they were forceful personalities that will do anything they can to achieve that vision that's in their head already, right? I also say, like whenever you see an actor freak out, like on set, I'm like, well, first of all, their tool is their emotions. They're by and large emotional people.
Yeah.
Some of them more internally emotional, some of them are more external. But when you see emotion like that, one, it's just who they are a lot of times. But 2, like whenever I hear these kind of like somebody lost it on set and I hear a tape, I'm like, well, most of the time, let's take a look at that project that they're on. And I'm pretty sure that 9 out of 10 times it's a pretty terrible movie. And what has happened is they're in the middle of something they didn't sign up for.
Right.
And they realize it. And they realize that this bad movie, their face is going to be on the screen and on the posters. And, you know, they've tried to, in their own ways, push it in directions that the people, you know, the director and the producers didn't listen to. And so now, you know, they're in a place where they're frustrated and they don't know, they can't just show up and go, well, this thing sucks. What you're making sucks. But they want you to know that they're not happy. And so they will look for other things to vent about. But when you hear one of these tapes of one of them yelling on set or something, I'm like, it's probably not because of exactly what they're screaming about. It's probably more of a indictment of the process that they're in.
That's such great perspective, Carter.
I mean, it's just the way it is.
Oh, that's such so wise. You know, it's like it's such great perspective because you know, because it's coming back to like they care so much. Because if they didn't care, they'd be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Dude. I'm gonna go to craft service, go eat a donut, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I've been doing a lot of soul searching on what we just spoke about because, you know, if I do like 4 or 5 projects, like maybe one of them is something that I go, oh, this is, I'm very proud of this. And the people I've worked with, like they all are, you know, potential masters of their craft and they care. And then there are projects that I've been on, I'm like, yo, they don't give a flying F at all. They're like, soon as it's like, you know, called like the martini, they're already at the bar.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, why are you here? Like, what are you guys doing? Right. And you see people like, you know, that should be like working at night that are out just getting like shit faced or they're just fucking around. They come and they're so unprepared.
It makes me sad to see that because I just think of how many people would kill for the opportunity.
I know. No, I know. And it's hard. And that's something you learn in the filmmaking process. It's like, it's really hard. I have this struggle. Like every time you give up something, you realize like, oh, it just went from being like 100% of what I wanted to 99, and I'm never getting it back.
What do you mean?
Like if you give up on quality or something you believe in, or like allow like, oh, you know what? I'm not gonna fight on this. We'll just do it this way, the cheaper way, the easier way. It's just you have this percentage of how good the movie is, and you're just watching it drop. And you're never getting it back.
Yeah.
And in order to keep it really, really high, you got to fight for every little single battle that you can all along the way. Because any of these compromises, once you start compromising once, it heads to like waterfall after that. So it's really tough. And that's why I understand, and like I always do say, a lot of the best directors in history are not cuddly, understanding people.
Yeah.
They're forceful vision mongers who are not going to like be your best friend a lot of times.
And that's why they like to work with the same people too, to understand their, I guess, nuances.
Their process.
But all your favorites, I mean, all the people that people talk about as being the greatest of all time, they're probably all not, again, I don't want to say they're jerks or anything.
Passionate.
They're not the most cuddly people.
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick and Alfred Hitchcock, and to the ones that are, you know, dominating today.
Yeah.
They don't have that reputation of being like just the friendliest, nicest, listens to everything.
But most people that are like great at something, they're not like that either. They call it like social dysfunction, or, you know, they like social disorder.
All the greatest basketball players pretty much jerks.
Yeah. It makes me question, you know, that's why I've been questioning lately, like, you know, do I want to stay an actor?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I have the tolerance to do it anymore. That's why I love directing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I can be the first one there and the last one to leave, and I can like really like set a tone and like really make a difference, right? And as an actor, you do your part. You know, it's like you're on one movie you're the tire guy. You do the tire. Your job is just replace the tires, man. That's all. Don't be trying to get into that motor. Don't be messing with the turbos, right?
No, I get it though. That's my favorite. My favorite part of this job is helping directors. Tell their vision.
Yeah.
I love directors and filmmakers, and so the thing that always helps me, even when it gets hard, is when I have that director that I'm working with and I'm like, I don't care. I'm trying to help them do this vision, create this vision of theirs. I see it. I get it. I want to be a part of it. I want to help them. And so fighting any of those battles to help them is always fine with me.
What do you think makes a great director that in your experience that you've worked with? Because it doesn't mean that they're always going to make hit movies, right?
Yeah.
Because movies, it's subjective. So it could be an amazing film, but it doesn't mean that it's going to go make $1 billion. But in terms of directors that you go, this is a person that should be directing. What is that? What are those traits?
I just think, whatever process they have, there's somebody who just has a strong vision in their head and knows how to get a group of people together to execute it. And whether that's they start using the same people and fine-tune the process, whether they're forceful personalities, whatever that is, it's just that idea that they know that story well, they see it in their head, and they know how to get it out in a way that everyone else will see it and understand it the same way that they did. Right? And I think that's the most important part of being a really good director is being able to talk to these world-class actors, cinematographers, producers, studio, and being able to always articulate in whatever way they need to what that vision is very clearly and concisely in a way that everybody else is going to get as excited as they are. Right? And again, there's different ways that people go about that. I think they're also, the best ones are either geniuses themselves. So they see a vision like James Cameron of how to do things technically different, but nobody else has even thought of yet. And he's able to go out and execute that. Or, in some cases, just being really smart about who they hire and who they listen to and piecing together, the best ideas from a bunch of people that they were able to put together and using that to help them elevate that vision that they have. And I think, again, just having a clear vision and good taste of what's different, I was pointing at the original Halloween movie. I love that movie so much. I love John Carpenter. And I think, what's cool about that movie, and people have tried to do slasher movies and copied that movie millions of times since it first came out in 1977 or 8, I think, is that, you had these kids out of USC that basically were we're going to take this story about a guy in a mask on Halloween night, which is something they added, which was genius at the time, but just stabbing babysitters to death, right? There's a million ways to make that movie terrible or you've seen it a million times even at that point. But what they did is they were just huge cinephiles and Alfred Hitchcock fans. And they're we're going to make this movie about a guy in a mask killing babysitters. But we're going to make it like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. We're going to make it super suspenseful. We're going to drag it out. We're going to make you want him to strike because he's hovering around them so much. And it's not going to have all these bodies and gore shots and things like that. And just that approach and that idea and the idea that they took that seriously, right? And applied that logic to that kind of film and actually pulled it off is what makes that movie timeless and special. And still to this day, when you watch it with any other guy with a mask killing teenagers somewhere, that movie, there's something more quality about it and a little higher brow, and why it's still looked at as the ultimate movie in its space, right? And it's been very easily for them to just take the money, make a stabby movie, some sex scenes, give the audience, exactly what they expect out of something like that. It took a lot of guts to be like, we're not going to have a lot of stabbing and murder, and we're really going to hold out on that and push that back. And I'm sure there was conversations about that of like, where are the deaths? Where are the blood? Where's the like? But again, them being able to pull it off, like that's what's going to make this special and good, right? Is that it's approached like an all-time great is doing it. It's going to be so much cleaner and classier, and like, so I think you always got to have a good take on the material too that makes it different and makes it cool, and like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And it's going to be special, and it's going to be its own thing. Because I think as you get more up in Hollywood, it is easier to like just make things that seem like other things that are successful, and you don't want to do that.
Well, Carter, this has been just a fantastic conversation.
We could talk with you forever.
I know. No, me too. I hope I can come back and we'll actually tell more car stories.
Yeah.
The next time. But I really enjoy talking about the business with you.
Yeah.
And just such big fans of both of you. And
likewise.
I like this podcast so much. It's such an honor to be here. It's really, really cool. Thank you for having me.
It was a great conversation because not only did I'll speak for both of us. That
Sure.
I think we've learned so much, and from your perspective, because it felt so sincere, and it's a window into I think a lot of what listeners are not aware of, and
Yeah.
lessons of, this is a long marathon, and you got to love what you're doing, and it's like it's a business of no's, and and try to be different, right? With class and integrity, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
And that's the other thing is never stop learning.
Yeah.
Like every single day, like I learn something new all the time still. And I'm always grateful when I do.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well, you're a huge inspiration, and look forward to seeing you continue to kick ass and take over this world in the stories that you tell.
Right back at you.
Yeah.
Right back at you. No, thanks again. And I love being on this, and any other time you guys need a time filler, I'm here.
Thanks, Carter.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Cool.